So it looked like Caitlin Clark has a huge update.
For weeks, the story unfolding around Caitlin Clark felt more like a mystery novel than a sports update. Clues were scarce. Official statements were vague at best, carefully crafted to say everything and nothing at once. Fans were left with little more than silence and a few puzzling soundbites, as the biggest name in women's basketball seemed to vanish from view. But then, everything shifted. A low-res video clip quietly dropped online, showing Clark effortlessly pulling up from the logo during practice. In seconds, it ignited a firestorm. This wasn't just a glimpse of progress, it was a full-blown disruption of the narrative Indiana Fever leadership had been carefully curating. Suddenly, this wasn't about rehab timelines or easing back into form. It was a direct challenge to the tightly controlled message. A silent, sharp defiance. And now, as the footage continues to spread, the rest of the WNBA is left watching closely, wondering if this leak was a strategic move meant to shake up the competition, or the first undeniable signal that a franchise teetering on the edge is about to be rescued by its star.
Caitlin Clark has in fact returned to an extent. She has returned to an extent with the Indiana Fever. Look, Caitlin Clark is far from
The footage hit like a shockwave. In a landscape parched for updates, it landed like a digital thunderclap, impossible to ignore and instantly viral. After what felt like an endless stretch of silence from the Indiana Fever's front office, there she was. Not sitting on the sidelines. Not off to the side with a trainer. But fully suited up, active, focused, and looking every bit like the star fans had been waiting for. She wasn't just jogging through drills or testing limits. She was moving with purpose. Her cuts were sharp. Her handles crisp. And then came the moment that flipped the narrative on its head. Clark stepped up with that familiar swagger and drilled a deep three from well beyond the arc. The net snapped like it never missed her. That single shot didn't just silence doubts, it spoke louder than any carefully worded update ever could. In that one frame, fans saw clarity. Authenticity. A truth the franchise hadn't been willing, or able, to say out loud.
It's far from being fully back and, everything's all good and we don't need to be worried because, let's be real, we kind of should be worried. Because, again, they're still being secretive about it. But at least this means we have to assume she's back this season.
For weeks, fans were force-fed the same empty phrase over and over, day to day. A term usually reserved for sprained ankles or minor knocks, not for the mysterious, drawn-out disappearance of a franchise cornerstone. What began as a supposedly small issue quietly snowballed into a full-blown saga, with no clear answers and even fewer updates. Every so-called statement from the team felt like it had been run through a PR filter a dozen times. They offered no insight, no timelines, just vague language that felt more like smoke and mirrors than actual information. It wasn't just frustrating. It was maddening. And then came the clip. Grainy, unfiltered, and unmistakably real. In a matter of seconds, it cut through the noise and exposed what had been hidden for too long. No more guesswork. No more spin. This was Caitlin Clark, back on the court, moving like someone who never left. And the message was loud and clear. She wasn't just close to returning. She was ready. But the video did more than just update fans. It underscored just how bad things had gotten without her. The Fever weren't just missing a player. They were unraveling. The once electric offense that had lit up highlight reels was now stagnant, predictable, and at times, hard to watch. Injuries piled up fast. Sophie Cunningham, out. Sydney Colson, also sidelined. What remained was a depleted roster stitched together with hardship contracts and emergency signings, players who, days earlier, weren't even in the building. Suddenly, the weight of saving the season fell heavily on the few veterans still standing, none more than Kelsey Mitchell. Game after game, she carried the burden of an offense that had lost its identity, forced to fill a role far bigger than any one player should have to take on
this season. So Caitlin Clark running 5-0 with the backups, which is, again, something that we hadn't seen before. So Caitlin's actually at practice. So this is the first we have heard of, Caitlin actually being at practice. And because Caitlin's at practice, we know at least the goal is and the expectation is that she's going to be back.
The shift on the court was impossible to ignore, and it was brutal. Without Caitlin Clark stretching defenses from deep, opponents no longer had to worry about anyone pulling up from 30 feet. So they collapsed, tightening the paint, sealing off the driving lanes, and suffocating any space Aaliyah Boston had to operate. Boston, a dominant talent in her own right, suddenly found herself boxed in every night, double-teamed on every touch, swarmed before she could even pivot. With no perimeter threat to draw defenders out, the court shrank around her. Passing lanes vanished. Movement stalled. Offensive flow? Gone. What was left was a shell of the dynamic team that had once shown so much promise. Every game became a grind. Survival mode kicked in. They weren't playing to win, just trying to keep it close. Just trying not to break. And as the losses piled up and the postseason drifted further out of reach, the fan base hit a boiling point. Social media turned into a battleground, flooded with opinions on how to stop the freefall. But in a twist, the calmest suggestion turned out to be the most polarizing: shut her down.
Which is a positive thing for the Indiana Fever, because the Indiana Fever don't stand a single chance.
As the days without Caitlin Clark turned into weeks, a growing wave of fans and analysts began calling for what they saw as the safest option: shut her down. Rest her. Protect the investment. Why risk a long-term injury setback for what was, at best, a slim chance at a low playoff seed? On paper, the argument sounded reasonable. Groin injuries are notoriously unpredictable, tough to treat and easy to re-aggravate. A single misstep could sideline her for months. Sitting her seemed like the cautious, responsible move. But that line of thinking misses something crucial. It misunderstands the heart of a true competitor. This isn't January load management with the season out of reach. This is the final push. A playoff berth still in sight. And players like Caitlin Clark? They don't sit back when the pressure's on, they lean in. These are the moments that define them. The spotlight, the stakes, the opportunity to change everything with a single performance, that's what they live for. If she was healthy enough to move the way she did in that clip, cutting, planting, firing off deep threes like she never left, then she was healthy enough to compete. Her entire career has been a highlight reel of rising when it mattered most. She's not wired to watch from the sidelines. And while the public argued about what the Fever should do next, there was a subtle, easy-to-miss detail in that viral footage, one that suggested the decision had already been made. A small signal hidden in plain sight, overlooked by nearly everyone who saw the clip. In professional sports, there's a universal code during practice. If a player is rehabbing or not cleared for contact, they wear a different colored jersey, a bright yellow or red penny. It's a warning. A visual cue that says, no contact, protect this player. But Clark? She was dressed in the same blue as the rest of the squad. That one detail said more than any statement the Fever could have released. It wasn't just a casual shoot-around. This was full reintegration. No limitations. No restrictions. Not testing the waters, ready to play. Once fans picked up on it, the internet exploded. Frame-by-frame breakdowns, color comparisons, zoomed-in screenshots, the digital detective work was immediate. And the conclusion? Unmistakable. Clark was back. But the jersey clue did more than confirm her return, it exposed a much bigger issue. The way the Fever handled this situation was, frankly, a PR disaster. The secrecy surrounding her status didn't just confuse fans, it alienated them. With no clear updates and no transparency, the team left a void, and in that void, rumors and speculation flourished. The day-to-day label became a running joke. Fans new to the WNBA, drawn in by Clark's presence, were left scrambling for scraps of information, turning to blurry cell phone footage just to feel connected to the team they'd invested in. Which raises a serious question: was this a failure of communication, or a calculated strategy? Did the Fever simply misread the media landscape around their star? Or were they trying to play it close to the vest, keeping opponents guessing, planning to make her return a surprise? If it was strategy, it backfired. Badly. Instead of control, the organization sparked chaos. The lack of clarity fueled frustration, and the narrative spun wildly out of their hands. It's a case study in how not to handle the spotlight that comes with a generational talent. But all of that fades the moment she steps back onto the court. Because Clark's return isn't just a boost, it's a shock to the system. She doesn't just put up numbers, she warps defenses. From the second she crosses half-court, teams are forced to stretch out, guard tighter, rethink everything. That space she creates? It's invaluable. Suddenly, Aaliyah Boston has room to breathe in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell finds clearer lanes to attack. Shooters who've been struggling now get open looks. One player unlocks the entire offense. With her back in the lineup, the Fever stop looking like a lottery team and start resembling the dynamic, dangerous squad they were always meant to be. And somewhere in the background, the critics who downplayed her impact are starting to feel the heat. Because this footage didn't just hint at a comeback, it sparked panic in the corners of the league and online spaces that had quietly celebrated her absence. That overhyped rookie narrative? It's about to be erased by a series of logo threes and highlight assists. And her return doesn't just feel inevitable, it feels perfectly timed. A possible comeback game lined up against a major rival, under the brightest lights, with national attention locked in. The kind of moment that doesn't just boost a team, it elevates the entire league. This is bigger than one player. Bigger than one team. That single leaked video, the signs of desperation on the court, the quiet jersey clue, and the front office missteps, it all adds up to something massive. A turning point for the Indiana Fever. And maybe, for the WNBA itself. Getting Caitlin Clark playoff experience now, even if it ends in a first-round loss, is about more than this season, it's about building the foundation for something greater. A future with Clark and Boston as the faces of a franchise that could dominate for years. This moment isn't just about survival. It's about cementing Clark's role as the engine that drives attention, ratings, and relevance across the entire league. What happens next won't just determine how this season ends. It will help shape what the future of the WNBA looks like, for the Fever, for Clark, and for every team that has to face her.